Any questions from last week's class that anyone might have?
Not that I can think of.
Excellent.
It was a puzzling chart, though. Because you know what it is? You have these, you get, once you start going through a chart, you start getting a sense of what you think it means. And you don't know who it is. It is harder to pin. For me, it was harder to pin. I got these broad general strokes of what I thought this person was about. But like that Neptune opposition Sun, you know, to me, that's a person who does not know themselves very well. But how do you know, how do you see that? How do you know how to interpret that?
You don't.
Okay.
You don't. And that's part of what I'm going to be, what part of my goal over the next few weeks is to actually teach you what astrology can and cannot do. Okay. And we want to ascribe a lot of things to astrology which it cannot do. Yet I still think it's a very useful tool. But what I discover is both astrologers and astrological students want astrology to be able to tell all.
Right.
And because of this, I've actually decided that I'm going to throw you a couple of curveballs, and I won't tell you what they are, but over the next couple of weeks, just expect, you know, things even more surprising than last week, because the goal is to really train ourselves in what it is we can actually expect in reading a chart. It's also very different when you are a professional. There are different ways that astrologers work. Some astrologers never meet with their clients in person. They may get something written through the mail or nowadays email, and they may write up a report, or they may record a report and send it to that person. There are other persons who work by telephone, where they're able to interact with the client and get feedback. Feedback in this field is always so helpful because, you know, you get to have a sense of whether you're heading down the right path with something. Because a Sun-Neptune opposition could be anything from hypochondria to, because of the house positions in last week's chart, what could be, you know, illicit affairs or children born out of wedlock. It could be incredible drama and creativity. Any one of these things can come through that particular aspect. It could be megalomania and, you know, fantasies about self-importance. So really, the advantage of talking to a client or sitting with a client is you get feedback. When you're actually sitting with a client, you get the feedback that is sometimes unspoken because you may get body language or other things that give you some clues if you're heading down the right path or not with the information you're giving. Because we know Sun-Neptune opposition can mean any one of these things, and it could also manifest as all of them in somebody's life. Or it might just go down one method. And I actually wanted to start tonight's class while I remember. I got an email today from Mike in the UK who says, "Hi Christopher, I wanted to pose a question in today's class, but feel that it would be easier to explain it via email and just send a reminder during the live streaming." Well, I beat your reminder.
He's on.
Okay.
He's watching.
My question is in regards the writing up of preliminary notes. You discussed last week the necessity for looking at the chart using the 7 steps technique in order to arrive at a delineation. Would you therefore write up preliminary notes before seeing the client based on the 7-step method? And would you, if you don't mind me asking, follow this with a full written report after the client consultation? Mike goes on to say, in the 1950s, a British astrologer, Margaret Hone, wrote her book, Applied Astrology, in which she took actual cases and showed the notes she had made previous to seeing the client, and the full astrological report that would have been written and given to the client after their session. Every astrologer has their own way of working, but would you follow a similar pattern, making written notes using the 7-step system, and then after the session with the client, follow this up with a full written report? The question may well be covered in the course, but it is something that I feel would benefit the whole class to know. And my answer to this is that no, that actually is not the way in which I work. But I think it is a very systematic and thorough way to work. And I also think it would be a great beginning step for beginning astrologers. The reason I don't do this is because I'm not a trained typist, and it actually takes me 5 to 8 times longer to write than it does to speak. And therefore, if I were to do a written report for a client, we would be looking at anywhere from 8 to 12 hours of typing that I would have to do. And there is just no way that I could make a livable wage doing that. So when I work with a client, my process is I may look at the chart in advance, but I am pretty much doing a cold reading when I sit down with a client, unless it's a repeat client. I strongly recommend when somebody comes to you for the first time that one begins the process with what I call an initial consultation. That is the natal chart plus 3 years of progressions. After the natal chart has been done, you only have to look at the progressions. Nevertheless, in my field, I will oftentimes get people who have had their natal charts done once or twice before, or even more, and they just don't want to pop the extra money for that. They really want to know what's going on now. Nevertheless, what I will do with such clients, and I mentioned this in last week's class, I had received a compliment from a client, and I really assign it to the system that I teach here. And that is, I will still look at the basics of the natal chart. What I do is basically cut to the chase. I will go right to the very last step that we use in our 7 steps of judging, and that is to note the dominant planet, the most harmonious, the most discordant. The same with the sign, the house, and the aspect. And I will just touch on those factors with the client. And those being the strongest factors in the chart, you're actually speaking to that person. It also helps as the astrologer. It's much like a medical personnel who's doing intake. You have to, on the first visit with a client, you have to sit down and get their case history and know what medications they're taking, what they've been treated for in the past, what the family history is, etc. Well, the initial consultation or the natal chart is a little different than that, in that you're building up your basic knowledge through interaction with the client, talking about the natal chart, but the progressions and everything else feed off of the energy in the natal chart. It gives you the tone and the understanding of that person and how subsequent events and patterns work out in their life. So I think this methodology that Margaret Hone used is actually excellent. And I think it is a great study tool. But I think for a professional, unless you have a really well-heeled clientele, you would not be able to get your time's worth in income through following this procedure. Recently, a client came to me with a written report that she had received for her newborn nephew. And she was showing it to me, and I think part of that is that I've never given out written reports. Clients ask for them. Oh, could I have that in writing? And I tell them, yes, if you're willing to take the tape to a transcriber and to have them type it up for you. You can have it in writing.
But it's such a joy to be able to hear it again. I mean, I take my tape and listen to it all the time that we did.
Right, and some of my clients also use it as a sleep aid. They tell me that my voice calms them down and puts them to sleep. So when they're having anxiety or insomnia.
That's fine.
I haven't tried that one.
So I guess I've been in bed with a lot more people than I knew about. Yes.
Mike says thanks.
Oh, you're welcome, Mike.
Doug from Carmichael, California, he also signed on, so we've got 2 out there we know of.
Welcome, Doug.
You know what, Christopher? I remember I would try and follow the 7 steps of judging, and then sit down with someone to go through all of it. They would get lost halfway into it. It was like it was just too much information, and they wanted to actually cut to the chase.
Right, and that's the other thing. What I've also discovered is clients do want to cut to the chase. They have burning issues that they want to talk about. Most of them are not trained in astrology, nor will they ever will be. So when you discuss with them, well, your Mars is in Aries in the 5th house. Yet for us, that is the bones of our astrological dialogue. And that means something to us, but it means nothing to them. And I've had clients say, well, none of that makes sense to me, but this, and this information was very useful. So one has to also judge from the client who has a knowledge of the language and wants to know the hows and whys, and who just wants to have a reading. The other thing I've discovered, and some people really like to go on. And my sessions, if it's a follow-up session, it usually lasts 45 minutes. If it's an initial consultation, it's between 60 to 90 minutes. And that depends upon the dialogue level of the client, because I can usually say what I need to say in that amount of time. But the thing is, for most people, you have also lost them after a certain amount of time. And most individuals, if you're doing a written report, don't necessarily want to read the encyclopedia of their life. They're going to want the Reader's Digest condensed version. Now, Vega, what I've heard, that the advantage of a written report that some have mentioned to me is that they can find the parts more easily than they can on a tape.
That's true.
Rather than on the tape where you're fast forward, fast forward, fast forward. Oh, wait, did I get that part? And listening to it again. So that's the convenience of writing. I'm somebody who likes written reports only in that I'm a spatial learner. And just as I can read a book and know what place in a book to go back to, it's the same in a handout of some kind. I develop a physical sense of the map and can go and find the information there, which is harder in a recorded format.
Yeah.
Do you find, though, when you're doing a reading, that because you've done this for as long as you have, that you can really synthesize all the things that we're learning to do in the 7 steps? You really are able to pull that out of a chart?
Yes, and you do synthesize that. So you're not sitting there with the client saying, well, you've got 4 planets retrograde, and this one's stationary, and this is above, and this is below, and this is east and west. No, this is what the astrologer takes in, and they form their preliminary opinion based on that, and that helps to shape the other information that you give. And even in the process of doing a chart, you will find contradictions. Can you imagine? Individuals who have dichotomies in their personality or contradictions in their personality. But there's certain things. There may be no planets in the 2nd house, but they have 4 planets in Taurus. So the information you might initially give about, not being all that materialistic, you may find that it is supported somewhere else in the chart. And so the astrologer has to be able to synthesize all of that information. Now, the written report that the client shared with me, getting back to that, I think they were impressed by the volume of information. And there are computer programs out there where you can also buy report writer packages that go with them so that you can send out a report to a client. But these are reports that a professional astrologer has written. And basically what you need to know is what a computer can do is it can just pick out specific areas. A computer cannot synthesize information. So the computer can spiel out a report on Sun in Taurus, Moon in Gemini, Cancer rising. It can pick out and give you information on Mars in the 5th house, Venus in the 6th house, Mercury in the 7th house, and give you snippets of information based on all of that. And it can then also give basic general information on the aspects between planets, but it can't synthesize, well, this planet falls in this sign and in this house, and this is how it can operate. And that's what the human brain is useful for and what the astrologer's useful for. Plus, when I do a chart reading, there is a certain amount of stream of consciousness that comes with that, because basically I'm using a set of symbols to tap into the unconscious makeup or soul of an individual. And when I'm reading that, and if I'm uninterrupted and somebody says, could you repeat that? Generally I can't. And I'll just have to say, well, it's on the tape. You can play it back when you get it. Because there is in this also, there's a science and an art. The science is setting it up. The art is the interpretation. And in the art, there has to be a sense of flow that's taking place with the information. And when it's interrupted, it can oftentimes, stop the process. So that's my analysis. Any questions on that from anyone? Okay, we're going to be streamlining this process over the next few weeks, but tonight we're still going to go through our 7 steps in judging. You know all of these. We follow 7 distinct steps. We remain orderly. Why? It's helpful. And we look at generalities to begin with. So, the first generality is retrograde planets. I have helped you out here. How many do you see?
How about 2?
2. Pluto in Virgo in the 6th house. Neptune in Scorpio in the 8th house. These are retrograde. So we're going to call these repressed qualities.
You know what I liked what you said last week was you said, I think the words that you used were slow in developing.
Yeah, because repressed to me sounds almost like a psychological issue.
Right,
That's something so deep-seated and shoved down at the bottom of the can that it's never going to come out. But again, these are traits which are slower in developing, and they oftentimes become those great areas of discovery later in life. So in this case, we're looking at, with this individual, universal welfare urges expressing through an I analyze attitude, and in the compartment of life that has to do with work and the workplace. The other thing that we're looking at, slow in developing, is Neptune, utopian urges in the house of other people's resources or the spirit world, and expressing through the I desire series of thinking. These are things in this person's life, if we live long enough to see his history, we might see developing over time, if they have not done so already. Stationary planets, can I just say there are none? Let's move on.
Works for me.
Above the horizon, at a glance, you can count. Excellent, class. So, there's 4 above the horizon. Why did I bring this chart in? It's obviously going to be a public figure. I don't have an answer for you. But this is the case. This is one of those curveballs where here we have a public figure, but where the majority of the personality may be more private or more submerged. That there are going to be things that tend to
But look,
be
that
visible.
That Venus and Uranus are shooting right up there to that MC.
Indeed they are.
So that would be one way of tapping it, making it
As
more public.
so is the Mercury. We might actually discover in here that there are other qualities that add to the publicity in this chart. Though this is the case where 10th house isn't that strong. Midheaven's not that strong. But this is a public figure, and I expect everyone in the room and online to know this individual's name. So there are other factors that can create fame, notoriety, or recognition. What is interesting is, although the midheaven's not powerful in this chart, the ascendant is. So this is somebody who may have may be highly personable or have a charismatic personality or might stand out physically in some way. So, planets below the horizon. This, if we counted 4 above, there's 6 below. And we've pretty much given the answer here. My guess is this is somebody who prides himself on a certain amount of anonymity, or may make efforts to attain that. Generalities? East? A bunch. I see 6. So, this is someone who molds their environment, is at cause of things in their life. And when we get to the biography, this will become apparent. Though it's both cause and effect, because if we look at the west side of the chart, there's still 4 planets there. And what one learns is that sometimes to shape their destiny, you have to place yourself in the right environment where that's going to take place. As of next week, and for the last 3 weeks, we're going to start with this step. That way we're spending more time on the end of the chart rather than on the beginning of the chart. And that way I think we'll even more thoroughly deepen our interpretive skills. So, power, nothing can be accomplished without energy. It's determined by the houses, and you all know what they are by now: angular, succedent, cadent. In this chart, let's take a peek.
Just one in angles.
Venus in the first house.
Is that why we're talking about the charisma part of this person? Because Venus is in the first?
I think that's a good component in it.
Well, and then Neptune trines the ascendant. And Neptune is considered charismatic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And Neptune and Uranus are particularly charismatic?
They are in very different ways. Very different ways.
In the chart, one of the chart rulers is Neptune, right?
With Pisces on the ascendant, that Neptune does become an important factor here. And when we start going around the wheel, we'll talk about that.
So just
One
angle.
planet.
But so that makes art and artistic expression, harmony, beauty, a really important part of this person. Although it's
Yeah, which is opposite of Venus home in Libra. So this is the fall for the sign of Venus in Aries. Scorpio is the other fall for Venus.
interesting to figure this out.
All right. 6 planets are in succedent houses. Sun, Mercury, Mars, Neptune, Moon, Saturn. Average strength. 3 planets in cadent houses. Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto. So, just at a glance, you know,
This
what's going to stand out about this person? If there's anything.
I think they would have to make effort to have the energy available for the things they want to do. That's how I would interpret that.
And one of the ways I would interpret it, in addition to that, is one of the things that's going to be noticeable about them will either be their charming personality, Venus in the first house, their physical good looks, Venus in the first house. What else? Their pursuit in the arts, or their sociability. Hey there. Come on in. All right. Distribution of planets among the signs gives us the qualities. And again, that's movable, fixed, and mutable. Quality really lets us know the degree of adaptability that a person has. And when you spend time with anyone, you get a good sense of what degree that is. This is why quality is so important in things when you're looking at chart comparisons, because it determines in a workplace, in a marriage, even in a friendship, in a client relationship, how well you're going to mix with someone. So let's look at qualities. Let's look first at the movable signs, which are Aries,
3.
Capricorn. So 3 planets in movable signs. 6 are in fixed signs. And 1 planet plus the MC and the Ascendant are in mutable signs. Here we have our 1 mutable planet. So how adaptable is this guy?
When they get on track, they like being there.
What's that, Vega?
I said I would think you would, if it's a he.
It is. This is male number 1.
Okay. I think he would be, because he has both his ascendant and his midheaven as mutable signs, and they tend to want to get along. And even though he has a lot of fixed things, I think he wants to get along.
Now, wanting to get along, and being able to get along can sometimes be 2 different things. Another factor I would look at is Venus is in the first house. So I think this also goes into the concept of wanting to be the nice guy and wanting to, what happens with Venus in the first house?
They want to show
Pliable, and it wants to give way to, least resistance.
It wants to be loved. And in order to be loved, you can't be saying what to people all the time. No, no, no. We don't like that word. So my guess is this is probably somebody who, at least on the surface, superficially, will appear to be conciliatory or tries to get along. But what do you think happens once he really makes up his mind about something?
sticks to it.
Yeah, you write manifestos, basically. you basically say, this is the way it is, and it ain't going to be any other way. So, all right, the triplicities are basically the element. It again gives us some information about the individual state of being. And of course, fire, inspiration, enthusiasm, energy; earth, practicality, pragmatism, plodding; air, aspiration, ideas; mental, social are the air signs. And the water signs are feeling, emotional, psychic, intuitive, impressionable. So, temperament as well. The triplicities determine our temperament, and temperament is such an important thing to understand in individuals. So, it's not one of the preliminary steps. This is a real key in understanding someone. So, what can you say about fire? Venus in Aries, Mars in Leo, Uranus in Leo, Midheaven in Sagittarius. 3 planets in the MC. That's almost a fourth of the chart. 5 planets in Earth signs. Sun, Mercury in Taurus, Pluto in Virgo, Moon and Saturn in Capricorn. This guy's practical. He's down to earth. He can be very methodical in the things he does. 1 planet is an air sign.
That's Jupiter.
You found it. Tucked away in the 12th house. It's possible he may keep his ideas to himself.
The more controversial ones.
Right. And there could be a chance that they all are. And 1 planet plus the ascendant are in water signs. So what's with that? Neptune? Pisces. Is he unemotional? Not necessarily. That Neptune's trining the ascendant, as Vicki pointed out. So there is dramatic ability there. Importance. Where do we focus our energy in life? Where are we spending our time? This is always a good question to ask yourself. And I'll tell you, there's a very good chance it is in the area of your dominant houses. When you do personal inventory, it's a good place to look. So, personal houses, 12, 1, 2, 3, companionship, 4, 5, 6, 7, and public, 8, 9, 10, 11. Let's take a look at male number 1. In the houses of personal, we have 4 planets: Jupiter, Venus, Sun, and Mercury. Companionship houses, we have 3 planets: Mars, Uranus, Pluto. And in the public houses, we have 3 planets. And they are Neptune, the Moon, and Saturn.
So would you look at this and say, well, this person's pretty well balanced in the way they spend their energy?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
They probably distribute their time in all of these different areas, though I would guess that the majority of the time is spent in, well, this goes to another area.
Oh, you're talking, okay. Yeah. The wealth.
But yes, in personal time, that this is going to be someone that might decide in life that the things he does have to be of personal interest to him. And therefore, he might figure out how to tie business pursuits or social pursuits into his personal interest. All right, trinities: life, wealth, association, and psychism. This is a distribution among the houses that's very similar to the trinities or the elements. So houses 1, 5, and 9 are similar to the fire signs in their natural positions: Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. The houses of wealth symbolize the natural houses ruled by Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. The houses of association are mental and social. They correspond to the natural positions of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And the houses of psychism are emotional, feeling, intuitive, and they correspond, of course, to the water signs: Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, to their natural house positions. So, 2 planets in the trinity of life: Venus in Aries, Mars in Leo. 4 planets in the trinity of wealth: Sun and Mercury in Taurus, Uranus in Leo, Pluto in Virgo. There are 2 planets in the trinity of association, and they are right here: the Moon and Saturn in Capricorn in the 11th house. And there are 2 planets in the trinity of psychism: Neptune in Scorpio in the 8th house, Jupiter in Aquarius in the 12th house. Well, here again, there's, some distribution in all of these areas, except one area stands out: wealth. So, what I was getting ready to say before is I think that this is somebody whose real primary interest are working and making money and friendships. And he will make sure that all of those things conform to his personal interest, since the personal houses are most prominent. My guess is, to be this person's friend, you would have to follow their personal interest, whether it's watching baseball games or whatever that might be. That's how you'd be able to pal around. And or you could connect with them through work or professional matters. All right. We're going to do the actual reading of the chart, where we go around the wheel, starting with the ascendant and ending up there again. We want to note the nature of the planetary energy transmitted through each house. That means what planet is in the house, what urges are being expressed there. The sign occupied by the planet we consider, because that's the sounding board on which this tone is being played, and it qualifies the expression of that tone. And I combine 2 steps. I combine steps 5 and 6 when I'm doing this. And 5 is, as you know, more than one planet. There are chief rulers and co-rulers. We look to the planets on the signs of the cusp. Unoccupied houses, we look to where that planet falls, because the other house position has an influence over the planet governing the house cusp. Therefore, there's an interrelationship between those 2 houses. So, now let's start chart interpretation. We've got about 55 minutes to spend on this chart. Let's start. Talk to me of Pisces.
Ruled by Neptune and Jupiter.
Okay, Jupiter's in the 12th house. Neptune's in the 8th house. But what I'd like to do first is describe some Pisces traits. We could start with the fact that it's a mutable sign, so the personality tends to be conciliatory. The symbol for Pisces is 2 fish swimming in opposite directions but bound together by a ribbon or a common bond. So that shows the qualities of empathy that are strong in the Pisces nature, being connected.
I was going to say Pisces rising is very connected to what's going on around.
They're very sensitive to the environment. And it's much like the way when fish swim in schools, they all seem to know to turn at the same time. Pisces is doing that in the environment all the time. They are in tune with what is going around them.
And Pisces people also, they're very, they can gain material things pretty clearly, but they are a little under self-confident. They're kind of like they don't have a lot of self-confidence.
Especially if that is a sun sign, that can become apparent. But Pisces is a water sign, so the tendencies are to be emotional, sensitive, feeling, intuitive, impressionable. What about dramatic?
Certainly.
Are Pisces lovers? They are. It's the sign of soulmates, those twin fish tied together, or these two souls. So Pisces in many ways are very romantic, and they're not just romantic in terms of, candlelight dinners, but they oftentimes are romanticist in the sense of they hark back, or they hark back to another era or another age. They may seem like they've walked out of another period in time. So, we've pretty much described the traits. What about physical appearance? The first house has to do with health, the physical body. Describe some physical qualities for me.
According to Zane, they might tend towards fleshiness.
Okay, fleshiness. I always say Pisces.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed something. What did you say? What did you say? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Zane says that Pisces tends toward fleshiness.
Fleshiness.
It's a water sign
What-
thing.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear it and I was, what?
What is that word?
Towards fishiness.
Yeah, right. And not necessarily heavy, but
Plump.
yeah, yeah. Tendency,
Yeah.
right.
You just puff up a bit. I almost see, invariably see Pisces rising or Neptune in the first house as bedroom eyes.
That's what it is.
They oftentimes have, come hither, come yon eyes, or there's something about their eyes that may be droopy, sleepy, or big puppy dog eyes.
Especially this person, I would think, with that Neptune and Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
And
Trining the Ascendant,
Yeah.
yeah. So that might be something that's noticeable. Not necessarily fish eyes, but yeah, there's going to be something in their eyes that will stand out. And Pisces can sometimes be more dark in coloration. Oops, back. Let's talk about Venus in the first. Well, no, let's go to the rulers of the Ascendant. So the first house of health, physical body, personal appearance is influenced by Jupiter in the 12th house. So physical matters could be subservient to what? Time spent in prison?
Time locked up reading books. Not locked up though. I mean, the 12th house is.
12th house is so mysterious to me.
Work in hospitals and institutions or helping people that way?
Right, and personality could be impacted by Jupiter's in Aquarius, charitable causes, philanthropic causes, standing up for the weak, the helpless, or the lost cause.
Well, and I have two people in my life that are very important to me who have pretty active 12th houses. And what I observe about them is that they, even though you can see their qualities, they don't want people to really know about them.
They're private.
They're very private, even though the issues are public issues, and a lot of people wouldn't take issue with
With their issues.
Yeah.
The other, Neptune, falls in the 8th house. Death, the spirit world, other people's money. Neptune's in Scorpio.
Metaphysics.
Could be metaphysics or sex. Could be the interest with that. So those two things could shape this person somehow, but
Could you also say that they might inherit a huge bundle of money?
they could.
There's potential.
Or they might, the potential could be there. Neptune's there, so you get 10%. So, you know, the estate was worth something at one point, but, you know, after the lawyers and the debtors all get their portion, you know, what's left is the record collection. Venus in Aries in the 1st house.
Well, you'd think that the person would be attractive, that there would be something that would be noticeably attractive.
And exercise conscious.
Because of Aries.
Yeah.
Venus is not exercise conscious. Venus wants to be beautiful.
Would they wear their heart on their sleeve almost because it's the 1st house?
And I would assume that almost more from the Pisces rising than Venus in Aries. Because Venus in Aries can be a little bit wham bam, thank you ma'am. You know, it's that it just gets in there, moves fast, and gets out. That's the nature of Venus in Aries. So it's not, that would not be the quality of, ooh, baby, ooh, I just want to lie here with you. It's just not it. Might come from somewhere else in the chart, but not from Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries tends to be quick, impulsive, gets interest quickly and loses interest quickly. But it's in Aries, so that tends to offer a little more of a masculine quality to the Venus. Could be more rugged good looks rather than soft good looks in someone. No, why am I pushing this? All right, I want this button. Let's move on to the 2nd house. Aries on the cusp. Mars is the co-ruler. The Sun and Mercury fall here in the sign of Taurus. Talk to me of Taurus.
Well,
Let's start with the symbol. What is it?
The bull.
It's an earth sign. It's practical, plotting,
Steady.
acquisitive.
steady, likes to collect things.
Wants to hang on to its money. Works hard. Patient.
And Taurus loves music. Taurus loves to sing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
So-
Aretha, wasn't her Mercury in Taurus?
I can't
I
remember.
think her Mercury was in Taurus. Something about Taurus is what we concluded gave her the.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, but I can't remember the chart.
But this is a person who thinks a lot and takes and identifies a lot with their acquisitions and their personal.
Where the sun falls in your chart, that is where your self-esteem is attached. That is where you seek your importance. So in a chart, when the sun falls in the 2nd house, one's importance is tied in with their material wealth or with their system of values. It doesn't just mean that it's all about money, but it is all about what you value. So that's going to be apparent in this person. Somebody brought up being steady. It is an earth sign, so it's practical, it's pragmatic. It is a fixed sign, so somewhat rigid and unyielding and perfecting by nature. And we have the power urges and the intellectual urges expressing through the sign of I have And in the house of the chart, that pertains to wealth, possessions, collections, and values. The co-ruler, Mars, is in the 5th house. This is someone who could either make money through entertainment, the arts, or things related to children, or might freely spend their money on things related to speculation, entertainment, or the arts, or love-making, fun. Third house, mental pursuits, early education, brothers and sisters.
Well, the ruler's in the first.
So, what will he think about?
Himself.
Yeah. Might be somebody who thinks about himself, or could even fuss or fret over physical appearance. Am I getting gray? Am I getting wrinkles? Are my eyes drooping? You know, am I keeping my hair?
Plastic surgeon's dream, baby.
What else could Venus ruling the 3rd house tell us? What might he want to study?
The arts.
Yeah, arts or music.
Yes.
What about relationships with siblings?
That'll be pleasant, probably.
Yeah, Venus rules that house. It'd probably be affectionate, warm, social, friendly. Might even place them at times before his own needs, since it falls in the 1st house. That you'll do things for others if they're related to you. 4th house, home, family, early childhood. Gemini, unoccupied, yes, the father. The ruler,
Influenced by the 2nd house Mercury.
So wealthy man.
you know, I'm not sure if we know that. And in this case, if it was Jupiter, I might guess that. But what I would say is that there are values that were learned from the father or instilled by the family or instilled in early childhood.
And he may think about the home. I have Mercury ruling as a co-ruler, and I think a lot about my home.
Well, right, and his home might be one of his biggest assets. With the ruler of the 4th house in the house of wealth, it could possibly indicate an interest in real estate, property, or again, the primary residence as being a primary asset. Generally, a Mercury-ruled 4th house can be a home that has books in it. One lives in a library. And or there may be an emphasis on learning or education among the parents. Quite possibly one's parent could be a teacher or just have a lot of hands-on. That could be the type of parent that you come home and they're there doing your homework with you, making sure that the intellectual acquisition at home is present. 5th house, Cancer on the ascendant, ruled by the moon. Mars in Leo in the 5th house.
They like to play.
Quite the look.
Likes to play. Would they like children?
I would think so.
Well, it's Mars. As long as the children can play hard.
Okay. Any other opinions? I heard a no. I heard a...
Oh, it's really distorted. Nah, they're not into kids.
Wow, mine is 46.
All right. And Mars is the most discordant planet.
Do they like children?
No.
Okay, you're learning to be astrologers. The other
But they could make money off
moon
it.
falls in Capricorn conjunct Saturn.
Yeah. And Mars is anything.
Yeah,
Mars
take a
in the
photo
house
with
is
my
strong.
kid.
Yeah, right.
$15.
Right, exactly.
That's interesting. I have a friend who has that.
Do they like children?
She has two. I'm not
Does she
sure
like
if
them?
She likes them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Do they like her?
That's questionable.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's questionable.
Every once in a while, you get children you don't like, or you get parents you don't like. It's known to happen in this world. And astrology can frequently inform us if that's the case.
Well, Zane says classically, any place Mars, the house that Mars is in is affected by strife, right?
Yeah.
Or influenced by strife. So even if it were harmonious, there would still be an element of strife.
Exactly. Right. It could be harmonious. You could like your kids, but they're constantly tearing ligaments in their soccer games.
Right.
And you're rushing to the emergency room all the time. So that's one form of strife involving the fifth house. So with Mars in the fifth house, passionate, it's in Leo. What would influence love affairs?
What would influence love affairs?
Feelings.
Okay, I'm assuming you're judging that from the moon and the I feel sign on the cusp.
It was more the I feel sign on the cusp.
Okay.
Because he's got such a strong ascendant, Pisces ascendant, he's got Neptune in the 8th house and Scorpio, so he's got that, I don't know if it's a grand trine, but it's definitely, that trine quality of, and if he has his feelings, he understands them, or maybe can maneuver well through them.
And Mars tends, though, to operate from chemistry. It's concerned with whether there's attraction or not. The moon in the 11th house might represent some confusion. Are they friends or are they lovers?
Oh, that's an interesting. Yeah.
But what about the moon in Capricorn in terms of emotional bonds?
Pretty hard
I
through
would
brick.
think they would. Pretty hard to what?
Through brick.
Well, that's conjunct Saturn.
Yeah, I would think that they would like to make long-lasting
It
emotional
would be very
bonds.
systematic. First we do this, then we do that.
Yeah, there could be some pattern to all of this.
Yeah.
Not a lot of warmth.
Yeah, moon in Capricorn conjunct Saturn is not necessarily warm. It
this
belongs to the
useful? Is it
utilitarian thought series.
Right.
Is this going to be useful to me? Is this person useful? Is this
Right.
relationship useful?
Right.
Is this really what I want? Is this, friendship, fun, and games?
Or could you also look at that as a person who they have a fifth house relationship would be not incompatible with the people who they regard as their friends?
Looks like an opposition to me. Yes, a question, Barb?
Comment. Renee says the Capricorn moon is strict with children.
Strict.
Yes.
Yes. You're all going to wear uniforms and line up in a row.
So this
They're
person
gray,
has
all right?
friends.
And yes, gray uniforms in a row.
Right. So this person has friends who thinks that this person should be more strict with their children. Would that be?
It could be
possible?
that, or they may have friends who the person you date may get run through their analysis screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go out with her. No, definitely not that one. So, and I haven't a clue. I'm just making this up based on the chart.
Right. But this person's not doing a whole lot of thinking about who they're engaging in the fifth house relationship with, right? It's just pretty impulsive. And
Mars.
it's all about having fun.
Yeah, I think that would be an accurate.
But don't you think they would have some intuition because of the Cancer, Pisces, Scorpio stuff?
Yes, I do.
I mean,
Well, yeah,
Mars
moods
may,
are
I
dominant
think Mars
planets.
is instinctual in its prime
Urges.
primalness.
All right, so much with romance. But what about entertainment and the arts? There is another facet to the fifth house.
Well, he certainly wouldn't be very successful at it with Mars being his most discordant planet. The fifth house is most discordant house.
Could one get injured?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mars in Leo in the fifth house might be somebody who wants to do their own stunts.
Oh boy.
What part would get injured?
They're hard.
Their back.
Back and spine.
Back and spine.
Like Superman.
Did he get his spine hurt?
Christopher Reeve.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine.
He has an interesting chart. All right, what about work? Unique. Collaborative. Brings prestige. Or that one takes a sense of pride in their employment. Brings money. The ruler of the cusp of the sixth falls in the second. They'll want work that is prestigious and has an income tied into it. Uranus is there, so there has to be something unique and or freelance about the work. It's not all the same. It needs to be constantly changing. It may also be work that involves collaboration or cooperation. Working in a team, in a crew, in a cooperative, in a corporation, or a nonprofit. Pluto can rule. Marriage and partnership? Mercury.
There's the one.
Right, they either bring assets or they take assets. And I'm guessing that this is somebody who likes to be in control of their money rather than to have somebody else impacting that.
Now, do you say that just because it's conjunct the sun, or does the fact that they're in Taurus have anything to do with that?
All of the above.
All of the above, okay. Because if it was, say, Sun and Mercury and Libra, would you say the same thing?
No, I'd then say that they're inclined to include partnership in financial decisions. But where they're the controlling principal interest.
What is original work?
Original work? Original work could be anyone that functions in creativity in the form of invention, science, the arts. Original work is when you do something that's different than a way in which it's been done before. So,
Like Andy Warhol.
yeah, like Andy Warhol, you
His
know.
work was considered
Or original
Original.
photographer, you know, and
or
things all the time.
Yeah, if you think of Warhol, there was nobody painting Brillo boxes before him. There might be a reason for that. Now they've done it since. When you think of Picasso, really he was at the vanguard of Cubism. Although he had contemporaries working in that field, he is the person that never stopped doing it. So original work, that's original work in the arts. You know, somebody comes up with the little things that the aged used to open jar tops with. Somebody had to dream that up, and that was not created before the time it was created.
You know what else that could be? It could, like, if you are an engineer, you are frequently given work to do that has to be invented. You know, someone comes with an idea and there's no recipe for it yet.
Right.
So you have to create the recipe for it.
Yeah, how do you make a smaller... I mean, I've been watching some films from the 80s lately, and when you see the mobile phones and cars at that time, compared to what we carry around now, which is more like Dick Tracy.
That can do so much more.
Right. Yeah, it can calculate your tip for you, take photos, and do your laundry. So that's all original work. Or, you know, sometimes when in the Academy Awards, they may give awards for most original screenplay, which means it wasn't adapted from a book. It's something that came out of somebody's head. So that would be original work.
That was just a comment by Renee.
Yeah. Neptune, Scorpio, 8th house. Utopian urges in the house of other people's money in the sign of I desire.
I desire other people's money.
Yeah, I do too. I'm always left with my
That's all
own.
I heard.
Okay, I desire. Wherever Neptune falls, we suffer from illusion or disappointments.
So he's not going to get it.
Well, so this person could have illusions or delusions about their partner's money. You know, and they think they're very well, and it turns out not so.
Right, or the amount of the estate that they're going to receive, or anything like that. But it also creates, if we look at the 8th house as psychic ability, this creates psychic sensitivity. It can be, you know, the non-physical, the disembodied. It might be an interest in things like that could include, you know, does consciousness survive beyond the tomb? Are there past lives? Is there, you know, future life? This might be somebody who contemplates those things. Esoterica might be a fascination. Or things such as, you know, remote viewing or...
And might they not somehow bring that into their 6th house of work because that Pluto and, you know, Neptune's in Scorpio? I mean,
Except we really only look at signs that impact the cusp of a house. So the Pluto we would associate with the 9th house as being that the 9th house is subservient to 6th house matters. But here we would say that the 8th house is subservient to 1st house matters.
Could they be a philanthropist?
Yeah, they could be. Because Neptune certainly in its best quality is idealistic. The 8th house is not only inheritances, but it can be grants. It can be scholarships. It can be coming up with creative ways to provide funding for utopian causes. Back to the 9th house. Religion, philosophy, the higher mind, travel, foreign countries, influenced by the 6th house. Might travel for work. Education could be very job-oriented, or focusing on learning things related to creativity. Scorpio's on the cusp, the house is unoccupied, the rulers fall in the 6th house of work and labor, and the 5th house of love and creativity. One's lovers could come from abroad, or you might meet them in the bar at the airport.
Interesting, yeah.
Sagittarius on the 10th house cusp. Career, honor, reputation.
It's in the 12th house, that mysterious place.
Jupiter is the ruler in the 12th house. So this might be somebody who has a behind-the-scenes career. Maybe a public career and an alternative career. Or this is somebody who might, though with a Jupiter-ruled 10th house, you rarely have remorse about what you're doing. But the 12th house, sometimes bring in those thoughts, oh, I really wanted to run a shoe shine booth, or he may worry about
His reputation.
Yeah, might worry about reputation, career.
Except it's in Aquarius. Aquarius is not going to worry about too much of anything, is it?
No, but the 12th house would.
The
Yeah.
12th house would? Okay.
So Sagittarius on the cusp of the 10th house would make a person that needs to feel inspired in their work and not necessarily like longevity in the job because of Sag.
No, the work has to be an adventure.
And it has to be an adventure, right?
It's just got to be an adventure. It's not worth doing. But Sagittarius can get in trouble for saying things that might be joking, off color, or, their innermost philosophies, but that they aren't necessarily politically correct or held by everyone.
Could you also say that their profession that they choose is somehow influenced by experiences that they've had with institutions or some type of 12th house?
Right, one could say that, though I don't know enough about this person's biography to say that with certainty for this person. But in astrological generalities, we could say that one's career could be shaped by their time in boarding school, or in the state penitentiary, or in the mental institution, or the week they were in the hospital, or the year they spent in the ashram, or as a novitiate in the monastery. All of that could shape one's professional choices. Eleventh house of friendships. Do you think they're important to this person?
Yeah. Moon there,
Moon, Saturn, powerful conjunction in the sign of Capricorn. Friends are very useful. Friends may use. What happens when you have the moon in the 11th house?
fluctuate. It's influenced by fluctuation.
There is fluctuation that happens. There's lots of little changes going on all the time. Though the moon in the 11th house generally makes for somebody who sees their circle of friends as their extended family. Who do you spend your holidays with? Your family. And your family are the friends that you choose, and not necessarily family by sanguinity or bloodlines. What about Saturn in the 11th house? Friends can be a burden. You could possibly spend a lot of time bailing friends out. Now, Saturn ruling your 11th house, might you keep friends for a long time? Yeah. You'd continue going to jail and paying the bail for them.
Yeah, in this case, Saturn's at home in Capricorn.
It is in its home sign. So this could be real longevity in friendships, and having older friends, having friends that one has known for a long time, making a sense.
Friends through family.
making friends through family and making one's friends one's family. And the Moon-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn can also give a great depth of responsibility, either towards one's friends, groups, clubs, or organizations, which the 11th house rules.
Traditions are important in the associations with this person.
I would say so, with both Capricorn and Saturn, that the tradition is important. You know, we get together every St. Patrick's Day, or, you know, we always do the Kentucky Derby together, or, you know, Christmas is at the cabin in the Adirondacks. There's definitely some traditions around that.
And they suggest they be friends in the military.
And does she give an explanation for that? Okay. Yeah, neither the Moon, Capricorn, or Saturn govern the military. Now, if Mars was there, I would jump to that conclusion, that one might have pals who are in this, you know, state police or police force or in the armed forces.
I can see where, you know, because of Saturn being so much about structure and being right next to the moon, I can see where she's getting that from, you know, just that whole, the feeling.
The regimented feeling?
Yeah, the regimented feeling of, you know, wanting your friends to all sort of be with the same tune and, you know.
Well, and Capricorn certainly likes a uniform, so that could be it too. But it might be a maid's uniform and not a...
Well, Mars is exalted in Capricorn, right?
Mars is.
Right, so, I mean, so you can see where the kind of the military and, you know, it excels in a regimented environment, you know, that emerges, but I don't see that. These are at odds with one another.
Yeah, they're definitely pulling on one another in a very powerful aspect.
So that would mean that they really aren't, right? That they are not militaristic, his friends.
I'm guessing the opposite. Because Mars is involved in what?
Pulling away.
Pulling away. It's a separation compound.
So they would not be into that type of thing. Got it.
Last house,
12th house.
Ruled by Aquarius in its home sign, right? No, it's not.
Nope.
and Jupiter is discordant in this chart. That's interesting. So
Have I
a
ever seen
discordant Jupiter would be tend toward more extravagances.
Right, self-indulgence, extravagances.
So maybe they did land in the slammer a couple of times.
I couldn't find that in the bio, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. But again, there could be issues around religion. You know, this may be somebody who feels other people should keep their religion to themselves, that it's a private affair. You pray quietly alone, and you don't necessarily, you know, try and make others do it your way. For expediency's sake, let's move on, because we only have 15 minutes and a whole lot more information to cover. Note the prominence of each planet and number of aspects, strength of each house. Nah, let's just go to note the most powerful planet, sign, and house, harmonious planet, sign, and house, discordant planet, sign, and house, by looking at the astrodynes. Okay, what's the greatest power among the planets? It's not a planet, it's the ascendant. When the ascendant is dominant in the chart, it's usually a very physical person. This is somebody who lives life through their body. The moon is next in strength, which is the domestic urges. So even though they're in a utilitarian sign, this guy cannot help but be familial and want to care for others. Dominant moon, even when it's in the sign of its fall, Capricorn, still has to express through nurturance. Mercury, second in power among the planets, third actually, intellectual urges. Is he a thinker? Yeah. And you might not guess that, except really looking at the astrodynes and when we go to look at the aspects. You know, Mercury and Taurus in the second house. But this is somebody who actually is going to have a strong intellectual edge.
Well, they've got a good mind. I mean, with that moon trine Mercury.
And as I say, a good mind is a terrible thing to waste. All right, on to the harmony. The greatest harmony in this chart comes in through the planet Venus. If we were going to tell this man to capitalize on something in his life, what would it be?
Himself.
Or his appearance, or his personality.
All right.
The most discordant
But
planet.
look how weak it is. I mean, in terms of astrodyne this week, in
Mhm.
terms of being in an angle.
But it's his greatest harmony. So
Right. Okay.
that's what counts.
Okay.
It means it doesn't come naturally to him.
You have
But
to
once the
effort.
thought takes root, one can capitalize on it.
Right.
If the most discordant planet is in the chart is Mars, what does this person have to watch?
Accidents.
Especially involving his back or spine, love affairs,
I was gonna say.
having children.
Out of wedlock.
Yeah,
That you don't like.
all of the above. Let's look at the house power in this chart. The most powerful house is the 11th house at 16.1% of the power. What's important to this man?
Friends.
His buds, his friends, his pals, his chums.
They're not that great for him, though.
No. And my guess with this chart, they fulfill a need, though,
Well, they have to, yeah. It's very powerful.
which might be his need to take care of those less fortunate. After that,
His first house.
personal interest, first house. Personal wealth, second house. Now, the harmony in his chart comes through himself.
First house, yeah.
Yeah, he's either attractive or charming or sociable, or all of the above. And somewhere in his life, he may have learned that that's the thing to cash in on. The discord, here and here. Friends and lovers.
Don't sleep with your friends.
All right. Now let's look at the signs. The dominant sign is Capricorn. I use, followed by Taurus, I have, and Leo, I will. This is a very practical man. Very pragmatic. And persistent, persevering, courageous. Taurus and Leo. The harmony is almost non-existent.
Or be sad.
It would be Sagittarius. There's only 3 harmonious signs: Sagittarius, Libra, and Taurus. It's a highly discordant chart.
Highly.
So, where does the harmony come in through Sagittarius?
Through his business.
And or having his philosophies about life and living life as an adventure, a great adventure. The discord comes in through Capricorn and through Leo. Where are the problems?
Friends
Right.
Friends and lovers.
You may not know who's your friend because they've been there forever in your life, or who wants to cozy up to you for some other reason. And the same thing can happen with lovers.
The Cancer on the fifth house cusp, lovers can be kind of clingy.
Could be.
Leo doesn't like that.
Mm-mm. All right. Can all of you go over a few minutes tonight? Because these short classes, we're really not able to cover everything and have dialogue. So, all right. Aspects. Power, conditioning. Those are the things we look at. I wanted to talk specifically tonight about two aspects, trines and squares. These are powerful aspects. Trine, two planets, 120 degrees or 4 signs apart. Most favorable aspect. Abilities, favors, opportunities, things come easily, spontaneously, good stuff falls in your lap. What happens, though, with trines, if we're not constantly cultivating our appreciation for them, they go by unnoticed. Count your blessings daily. I think he has some trines. All right, what have we got here? The first is, we can see the Sun forms a trine to Pluto. 15 Taurus to 5 Virgo, 10 degrees apart of a luminary in a succedent house. It's a very wide trine, but guess what? Nevertheless, it's a trine. It exists. So you've got the power urges in a luck compound with the universal welfare urges. This might be somebody who can express himself through philanthropic causes or work together with a crew, a team, a group of some kind. Be involved in collaborative effort. The next trine has to do with the moon forming a trine to Mercury, 20 Taurus to 27 Capricorn. We look for a luminary in a succedent house. So here you have the two planets that govern the mind, the moon being the subliminal mind and intuition, Mercury being the conscious mind, the cerebral thinking. And they are in a luck pattern. So sometimes his friends do bring him luck. It's known to happen, and vice versa. He may have assets he can bring to friends and or to groups, organizations. The other area of luck is Venus forms a trine to Uranus. Venus 13 Leo, Venus 13 Aries, Uranus 21 Leo. First to sixth house. There's going to be some luck between personality and self-expression and originality in the workplace. Look, Venus forms another trine. 13 Aries to 19 Sagittarius, the midheaven. So one's beauty, sociability, creative self-expression can work to bring luck and opportunities through professional life and career. Are you all following along, or is this going too quickly for you?
No, that's good.
Okay. Uranus trines the midheaven. So we have a grand trine here in fire. Venus, trine Uranus. Venus, trine the midheaven. Uranus, trine the midheaven. Originality in work also impacts one's reputation and the career. Would he be known for being quirky? Eccentric, unconventional?
Rebellious, maybe even.
And lastly, the last trine in this chart is Neptune trines the Ascendant. 9 Scorpio to 11 Pisces. This is perhaps the more powerful of the trines in his chart. sexy, and probably really intuitive. But that could make one smoldering. All right. Of course.
I want to meet him.
I want to meet him.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about squares.
Oh, my favorite subject.
Yeah. All right, what do we know? They are powerful, they are discordant, they are disruptive, they create obstacles in our life, and we have to, squares are the hardest aspect to control. Oppositions, you just choose one. With squares, you have to repeatedly reinforce the characteristics that are desirable and determine to only express along constructive lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's contributing factors to some of the discord in the chart. So if we look that here, the sun is tied in to a T-square. Maybe not. Jupiter, I think, is out of orb. They're cadent houses. But the sun does square Jupiter. That can be a little arrogant at times. Or what would, if it's not arrogant, what could a sun-Jupiter square be?
Great sense of humor.
In a square?
Well, maybe. I mean,
I would consider it misunderstood humor.
well, yeah.
But one could be a real practical joker. But with the square to the sun, other people are not always going to get your jokes. Or they might even feel disrespected by them.
You think Rodney Dangerfield had sun square
It must have at least squared my Jupiter, because I never got the jokes.
Thank you.
What about the sun squared Uranus? Sun in Taurus square Uranus in Leo. One can be quirky, eccentric, and unyielding about it. You know, no, I'm not going to do it your way. When I was born, they broke the mold. I'm going to do it my way. A square from Mercury to Uranus.
That's powerful, too.
It is very powerful. It's not the most powerful aspect in the chart, which actually appears to be the conjunction of Saturn and the Moon.
You know, he's got the Uranus trining the sun, which means he probably gets kudos for his creativity, but he makes no money off of it.
Except we actually imagine he does.
Well, but it's square. Okay, then the money,
The money comes erratically.
erratically. Okay, there you go. There's something discordant about it.
Yeah, it's inconsistent, it's erratic. It comes in waves, and it could be huge at one time and nothing. So,
But can't Mercury square Uranus be the ability to have an insight that can pull the rug right out from brilliance, from the general way of thinking about things?
yes, but it's also being a discordant aspect can make for somebody who's very tightly strung. Mercury is the nervous system. Uranus is the nervous system on steroids.
And it's the upper octave.
And they're in a obstacle compound to one another. So this is somebody who probably deals, we know he has strong intellectual abilities, and there are other factors that create intuition, and pulling in bright ideas one after the other could become very stressful to the nervous system at times.
Sixth house is I'm sorry.
Six houses health too. I mean,
Health.
anxiety issues.
Could be anxiety issues.
Could it be that his co-workers would probably,
Stress him out?
yeah.
Because why? He might actually choose to work with other geniuses.
Right, but they all are a little quirky.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to get
Just
along
like
with.
him.
All right, here's a square. Jupiter, square.
Neptune. Where's Neptune?
Oh. He squanders his partner's money.
Yeah, could squander other people's money or squander the inheritance. Jupiter is one's religious urges with one's utopian urges.
Didn't you say the sun was square Jupiter?
Yes. And opposition Neptune. So this is part of a T-square.
Right.
But we're focusing in on squares here.
I'm just,
So, yeah, it's hard to say. The utopian urges and the religious urges. This may be somebody who can't quite rest with religion of any kind. Might be drawn to the mystical, intuitive because of the psychic houses, but at the same time, too many rules, not enough fun.
too practical.
Would this kind of thing do drugs?
Could, though I have no knowledge of that. All right. And then lastly, Midheaven square Ascendant. Well, that is not that unusual of an aspect, but it oftentimes creates challenges in being able to link up one's personal desires with their life goals. There you have it.
George Clooney.
He has been called the best dressed, most stylish, most eligible, and sexiest man alive. Obviously, capitalizing on the weak, but the only harmony in his chart.
That's funny. Sure.
Strong social conscience and political awareness, the 11th house.
Well, and he's he is philanthropic with his, and pursuing really odd things like that Sudan.
The refugees.
The monitoring the elections in the Sudan through satellites. He and some of his buddies paid for this satellite to monitor the movement of people to find it and make sure that they weren't being harassed.
Work the 12th house, works behind the scenes for social causes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, this would be spy satellites for humanitarian causes.
Right, but that would be the Aquarius. Yeah.
All right, son of Nick Clooney and nephew of Rosemary Clooney. Didn't make the team.
Yeah, big disappointment.
Yeah. Didn't make the team. Mars in the 5th house of sports.
But it was the Cincinnati Reds, so I mean, come on.
Hey, they're red, Mars.
They're red as Mars.
All right. 1982, he arrives in Hollywood with $300 in his pocket, driving a 1976 Monte Carlo. Well, that's not such a big deal. It would be an old car now, 1970s muscle car, but back then, that would come on, a 6-year-old car.
Muscle cars.
I tried to keep mine for 12.
In 1982, $300 was worth something.
Yeah, that was big money back then. So his aunt gave him a job as a chauffeur. Right environment. If you want to work in TV or film, where do you go? Hollywood or New York. So he worked construction jobs while doing commercials, auditing, taking acting classes. And 1988 brought him a very important role in Return of the Killer Tomatoes. I do hope you've all seen that. It's a special film. Yeah. Well, get Netflix. Yeah, he was a baby in that. All right. 1989, he married Talia Balsam. 1992, they divorced.
No desire to
matter.
money.
Hey, you know, at least you figured it out.
Right. Had the opportunity, figured it out, and my guess is with fixed signs, he'll probably hold to that. And my guess is also his potential children are happy that he didn't have them, considering the amount of unhappiness it could bring everyone. Look at this. 2004, ruptured a disc in his back and had to cancel all appearances. That is discordant, and my guess is that's a lifelong issue.
How did he do that? Was it a motorcycle accident?
I don't remember.
Because I know he likes to ride motorcycles.
I don't know if it was that or trying to do his own stunts.
He may have been killing himself to doing that. Well,
Doing that.
Well, the ruler of the 8th house falls in the 1st house.
right, and Mars squares that Neptune. Maybe it's
Out of orb.
Is it out of orb? Okay.
Yeah. Any questions? It's 10 after the hour, so class is over. So, starting with next week, we are eliminating the preliminary steps in order to pick up our time so that we can start working on this end of the chart, which is where our interpretive skills need to go at this point. So, be prepared. Any questions or information from that end, Barb?
Not yet.
Okay, so there's 3 classes left. I believe April 12th is the last day of class. 3 more very interesting charts.
Good job.
Bye.
All right.